Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. And Jacques Nienaber has just announced the Springbok squad for the outgoing tour against Australia and Argentina. Quite a few notable exclusions, and a lot of fans very unhappy with the squad. But to be perfectly honest, I think if you've been paying attention throughout the year with regards to certain players, which sort of players seem to be featured more regularly, which players have been preferred in certain positions, as well as listen to what the Springbok coaches have been saying, it's a pretty straightforward squad as far as I'm concerned. I think, I still look at that squad and think there are not actually that many surprises for me, because when you sort of delve into it and you look exactly who's been left out and what sort of position they've been left out and stuff like that, there aren't actually that many surprises. And for me, it's actually quite a straightforward squad that I expected this sort of management to sort of pick. But unfortunately, as with everything, you can't please everyone. And there are a lot of fans who, right or wrong, are quite upset with a couple of notable exclusions. But before we look at the squad, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. In terms of the squad, this is how we will go to Australia. And it is as follows: Stephen Kitsov, Vincent Koch, Frans Malherbe, Ox Inche, Trevor Nyakane, Joseph Dweber, Malcolm Marks, Eben Etzebeth, Lourt de Jager, Salman Murat, Peter Steph du Toit, Sia Khaleesi, Albert Lowe, Kwagga Smith, Jasper Wiese, Dwayne Vermeulen, Dion Fourie, Franco Mostert, Faf de Klerk, Jaden Hendrickse, Herschel Yankees, Kobus Reinach, Alton Yankees, Andre Pollard, Lekanya Damon De Lendi, Andre Esterhazen, Makazolo Mapimpi, Willie Leroux, Kanan Moody, Warwick Lunt, Damian Willemse, JC Creel, and France Steyn. Now, first of all, let's look at two interesting inclusions in Faf de Klerk and JC Creel. Now, a lot of people were talking about the fact that who was going to play wing because, we've got Colby, Arendse, and Corsi, as well as JC Creel out. And I wasn't quite sure why, when JC Creel had been ruled out, because the usual thing with concussions is 10 days. So you have to be, you have to be stood down for 10 days. But 10 days from Saturday will take him to about next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. So he's very much still in line to play. And maybe not in the first test regarding maybe, I don't know what his training situation is, whether it's just you can't take contact or whether you can't train at all. But he's very much still in line to play during the Rugby Championship. Same with Faf de Klerk, who, would have been competed as 10 days in the next day or two. So he definitely would have, as long as it was just a straightforward, I think it was like grade 1 or standard 1 or whatever the terminology is, concussion, he would have been absolutely fine to have played in the first test against Australia. So he has been included. Now, first of all, the big sort of names that are excluded, the big one being Evan ROOS. That it continues to be the talk of the town, the frustration, the big sort of the rioting, regarding the fact that Evan ROOS has once again not been included. I say once again because he wasn't included in the initial Springbok lineman camps earlier this year, and instead Albert Lowe was included, and Albert Lowe once again seems to have the running ahead of him. And we started breaking it down. We started talking about the Bok game plan. We started talking about what players need to be able to do. And the more we talked about it, the more we sort of sit there saying you can understand why they think Albert Lowe is more suited to the Bok game plan. So to be fair, I don't think people are no longer, or any longer rather, upset with the fact that Albert Lowe is being called. The big debate seems to be the fact that we have included Dwayne Vermeulen and not Evan ROOS. So it kind of now feels like it's Dwayne Vermeulen versus Evan ROOS. And if we be perfectly honest, do we really expect to have excluded Dwayne Vermeulen after one subpar 35-minute performance? And there are pros and cons to both. I can understand the argument, because Dwayne Vermeulen is somebody who people are saying takes a few games to get back to his best, and you can't afford to be getting back to your best in a Springbok shirt and rather pick on form. The other sort of argument is, if you look back a year ago, some of the most key matches we had, for example, that New Zealand victory away, Dwayne Vermeulen was terrific. And Dwayne Vermeulen is a very important player for the Springboks, and and I think will be a very important player for next year's World Cup, and if he does make it. And I find it a weird rhetoric to talk about the fact that he's past his best, because the last time we watched him before this last weekend was in the semi-final for Ulster, and I thought he was one of the best players in the park. So the suggestions, and I think it's such a reactionary thing to say, based on the weekend, that Dwayne Vermeulen is past his best, that Jesse Creel's past his best, he played 9 minutes, and Joseph Dweber doesn't have an international career after one subpar performance. I think it's been very reactionary, and I think we do need to take a little bit of a deep breath and look at the squad. And I think it's a couple of interesting things, far more, maybe for me, far more interesting than rather the fact that Evan ROOS has not been included and Dwayne Vermeulen has, because there are a couple of interesting, in terms of the way they release the squad, in terms of the positions, which I think are quite an interesting insight as to, where we are as a squad. Now, first of all, I think that there could have been space to take Evan Roos as well, because I continue to not really understand why we take 4 scrum halves. It's a very strange thing for me to be taking 4 scrum halves all the time. We've got 2 flower halves, Alton Yankees and Pollard. A lot of people are upset by the fact that Alton Yankees are part of the squad. Again, he's the second choice number 10. He's always been the second choice number 10. There's no other flower half in the squad. So he was always going to go. I don't understand why people are surprised about this. And I'm hoping that we actually will see him play next weekend, because I reckon we might be seeing a move away from the 6-2 split. And Damien Williams is still very much listed as a utility back rather than a backup flower half, for example. But elsewhere, what's very interesting is that they're only doing 2 hookers. Now, again, it's quite weird. We've got 4 scrum halves, but only 2 hookers. However, they have said that Deon Fourie will be covering hooker. Now, that's something I was picking up on a lot when I was going to the Springbok training sessions. The fact that at every single warm-up, because usually you only get the first 15 minutes, which is when players are kind of warming up, maybe a bit of touch rugby. But you'll always see, I always saw Deon Fourie with the other hookers practicing his line-up throwing. And that was always a given. So I think that Deon Fourie is actually going to become quite valuable to the Springbok side in the fact that it allows them to pick maybe one fewer hooker, for example, if they wanted to go, because you've got a player who can play on the flank as well as hooker. And versatility has always been at a premium within this current coaching staff, the ability to play multiple positions. And we're seeing that. I mean, in the fact that if you look at the listed squad, for example, there are only 3 out-and-out locks, 2 out-and-out hookers, for example, but there are 2 utility forwards and 3 utility backs. So utility is sort of a buzzword within this Springbok squad. And the reason I say it's quite interesting in terms of the squad release is the fact that obviously like now Franco Masters being considered a utility forward, someone who can play on the flank as well as lock. And I think there's actually a certain amount of merit in starting Franco Masters next weekend, because I think that he was very impressive on the bench, and I do think he's somebody who starts very well. But for example, Jesse Creel is now being listed as an outside as a utility back, whereas previously he was listed as part of the midfield. So it's interesting that his son made that progression. So now, he's no longer an outside center. He is a utility back, which means the fact that he can play wing and outside center is part of his role moving forward. He's not just going to be covering outside center. He is now a utility back. And I think that he's something under pressure, because if you look at the squad, for example, and you think that Colby has to come back, you think that Curtly Arnson, for example, could be coming back, Spoon Corsi could be coming back, quite a couple of players who could be moving in, yeah. I think Jesse Creel is somebody who is at risk of losing his position. Kane Moody is somebody who has been retained, which is quite interesting, because if you look at the backs that haven't been retained, there actually aren't that many. So Curly Arnson's dropped in, Kane Moody, but it's pretty much the same backs who were named in the original rugby championship squad, minus Grant Williams, but added Kobus Renach. So the players who have dropped out of the squad from the first national squad announcement is, we'll go through from position. It's Thomas Toy and Ntsuka Ngunu. So 2 props have dropped out. Bongi Manambi has been ruled out for 4 weeks, which is why he's not traveling. Locks, they've left Marvin Ori and Ruan Nokia behind. And then loose forwards, they've left out Evan Roos, and then they've left out Reinhard Alstad as utility forward. Those are the players who have been left out of the squad, as well as Nkotli Arnson, who was replaced by Kane Moody. So, and I think that if you look at the players who are being left out, Roos is probably the only one which is a massive sort of, not surprise or shock. And again, I think there was space for him, and they probably should have gone with him ahead of a 4th scrum half. But I think that he's probably the only gripe I would have, or I think you could justify having. Because if you look at the other players, Thomas Atoy and Ntsuka are very much outside that core 5. You've got your 2 loose heads in Stephen Kitsoff and Oxen Chair. You've got your 2 tight heads in Frans Maherber and Vincent Koch. And then you've got your swing prop from Trevor Nyakani. Now, Thomas Toy is someone who can play on both sides. I think Trevor Nyakani is a better player and playing better rugby at the moment, and had a better Springbok season last season. So he's ahead of Thomas Toy. Ntsuka is somebody who's there to learn. If you look at the locks, for example, I think Salman Murat has always been viewed as a head in the pecking order compared to Ruan Nokia. He's also a number 4 lock, who is, so he's a front jumper, which he is the only other one outside Evan Etzebeth. So, you've got PSF Toy, Franco Masters, who can play at 5 if need be, and then obviously Lua Diaga, whereas it's sort of your front jumper, you've got sort of Franco Masters who can shift in there, but only Evan Etzebeth and Salman Murat will run around with 4 on the back in their sort of and in their franchise side. So again, it makes sense for me to be dropping Marvin Ori and even Ruben Okia, who I really do rate. If you look at the loose forwards, you got the Evan Roos gripe, but utility forwards, Rand Alstad, again, somebody's not really taken the Springbok his chances as much as maybe he should have. So I don't think that there's actually too much wrong with the squad. You know, the big sort of, as I said, the big gripe is no Evan Roos, but you know, people sitting there saying, you know, there could have been a justification for calling up Johan Krobbelar, but they were not going to add new players to the squad. You know, he was the only player who might have been called in, and they've decided, you know what, we'd rather go with Deon Fourie, who can pick a hooker, but can also, you know, give us a lot of different options, the fetcher and stuff like that. Who's been a part of the system. So that's sort of the gamble they've taken. Apart from that, you're not going to bring in any new locks or any loose forwards. You're not going to bring in any new flower house, for example. Johan Goosen is their third choice. He's changed with the squad, but he's not ready to play. You're not going to bring any centers in. You're not going to bring any outside backs in. So for me, it's a pretty straightforward squad. Again, I would have dropped one of the scrum halves, taken Evan Roos, and I think everybody would have probably been pretty happy with it. I don't think he would have paid though if he had gone. And again, what I keep saying to a lot of people is, we've got the end of year tour. Just keep waiting for that end of year tour, because we will see a team. We could very well see a team like Instukontunu, Johan Krobbelar maybe even, but it could be in the side. Thomas Toy with Selmurat Urunokia behind them, with a loose trio of Evan Roos, Ulrich Lowe, and Kwaka Smith or Deon Fourie on the flank. You could have, you know, Grant Williams at scrum off, of course, Renako scrum off with Johan Goosen at flower half, Elton Yankees at flower half. You could have your wings could be Warwick Halant. You could have Warwick Halant at fullback, and your wings could be, you know, Kanan Moody and Kurt Lawrence, because you could be back. You know, you could have a midfield of Esther Hazen and Jesse Creel. We're going to have a lot of rotation at the end of your tour when we have those SAA games. So we've got 3 matches left in the Rugby Championship. They're going to play their best team, if they believe, and they believe in these players, and they believe in the structures. So whether it's right or wrong, you know, there's no doubt that they need to improve, and that there are certain aspects which are a little bit worrying. But generally, you know, they back this group of players, and I think they've got the right to. And I don't think it's that confusing if you look at the players who have been retained. You know, we haven't seen much of Warwick Halant, so maybe we'll see him on the wing, for example. Kanan Moody could get an opportunity over the Rugby Championship. So I think there's still quite a lot of exciting selections that can happen. We could still see a bit more of Ulrich Lowe. I'd like to see a bit more of Salman Murat. And I think Josh Draper deserves another chance. I think to throw him to the wolves after one poor game is very reactionary and unnecessary, personally. You know, does he need more game time? There's no doubt. But they backed him. He is part of the setup, and he has performed well for them in the past. So give him another opportunity, and if he doesn't repay the faith, then by the end of your tour, you're saying, right, Johan Krobbelar, you're gonna have an opportunity over the next month to try and prove that you know that one better. But let me know what you think of the squad down in the comments below. Please do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you soon.